Hey, what's up? I'm Jabari Saunders, host of the Second Half Podcast. And before I sat in this chair behind this mic, I was a two-time All-American who played pro basketball overseas. When I started my second half, I worked with some of the biggest brands in the world, and also some of your favorite athletes. Welcome to the Film Room, where I'll put you up on game of what's going on in the sports industry, so you can make your next move your best move. Let's get it. All right, let's talk free agency. I know right now in the media and on the news, you're seeing a whole lot of information talking about free agency alert. Where's my favorite player going? This superstar wants to leave the team. Yeah, free agency time. That's what's taking place right now. In the beginning of June 30th, that's when free agency begins. You'll start to see a whole lot of conversation happening around your favorite player, where he's going. But also, there are some teams that are looking to get rid of a certain player that they may want to rid of to basically open up salary cap for, right? So here, let's break down free agency and what it is. Basically, what free agency is just the open market for NBA players to start shopping around what team they want to play for, or even if they want to stay on the same team. Some of them have that option to do that. But on the flip side of it, the teams also are going through that. They're looking at their roster. GMs are searching for the next best talent. They're trying to figure out what they want to do this year, next year, and the year after. And what that starts with is just basically free agency. But there are some rules within free agency that a lot of people don't even know about. We keep talking about, oh, LeBron wants out, or Giannis, he wants to go to a new team, which we've already heard already, right? That began in June 30th when everyone started to say, where am I going? So that just kind of opened up the doors for it. So free agency basically begins every year around June 30th, right? So the end of June 30th, that means July 1st is when everything starts to begin its formation. So when you break this all down, what happens, though, before we even start seeing contracts signed and real negotiations happening, from July 1st to about July 6th is when the NBA actually holds basically what's called a down period, a moratorium basically. And that moratorium basically allows for the NBA to figure out what the NBA salary cap is going to be for each team. So what people don't realize is every year a team has a salary cap that they have to sit under or try to sit under. Some of them actually go over the salary cap. And there are ways that they're able to do that. When they go over it, you got to pay a tax, and that goes to the NBA, right? Now, there are a few other things and restrictions that we have to actually analyze. So let's break that down right now. So there's two types of free agents, right? You have your normal free agent, and you have your restricted free agent. Let's start with the free agent right now. So non-restricted free agent, that person essentially has a total option to go out and talk to any team and make the decision solely for himself. They can stay with that team that they want to play for and negotiate their contract on how much money they want to make during that contract time, or they can choose to go to a different team. Now, when things come into play, this is the most freedom you are going to have for any team as an athlete playing on the NBA being a free agent, right? Unrestricted. Now, the flip side to it, restricted free agent. That may mean that the team has restricted you from being able to go to another team freely. So basically what happens is, say you want to leave one team A and you want to go to team B. Because I'm interested in going to team B, being a restricted free agent, that means that the team has an option to match whatever that is or give you more money to keep you on that team. They have the option to keep you there, and they could discard you. They could keep you on the team so you can play. But basically, the team has the ownership over your contract. And so that's where a lot of people don't understand the difference between a restricted free agent and a non-restricted free agent. Of course, being a non-restricted free agent gives you a whole lot more autonomy that allows you to go play for any team that you want to. Now, we spoke on something a little earlier that was called the moratorium period, or basically this time to win right now, right? July 1st through the 6th. Essentially what that is a time where nobody is really signing a contract. It allows for the NBA to really reset its salary cap and its guidelines for each of the teams. So within that space, the only thing that's really taking place is really your NBA figuring out what the salary cap is. But there are a couple of things that's going on behind the scenes because, let's be real, business ain't going to stop just because you guys said stop. So what's happening is that agents and teams are actually having a conversation about, hey, here's a contract that might work out well for us, whether I'm a restricted or unrestricted free agent. Here are some options. Here's what works with the team. And so they may be negotiating behind the scenes is going to allow them to basically, once that July 6th time frame ends, it's basically going to allow me to go right in and say, hey, let's get this contract, let's get it done and out the way, let's sign and get it moving in the right direction. So there's a lot of moving parts that are truly happening during this time, although there aren't any contracts being signed. It's really just a lot of verbal agreements and a lot of positioning yourself to go in and make sure that you are equipped and the team has what they need. Of course, at the end of that week, they may talk about lowering the salary cap or raising the salary cap. Obviously, raising the salary cap is going to allow you to have more players during that year or more money to operate with within that contractual year, which a lot of people don't understand that. And so that just allows for the team to say, oh, we got an extra $20 million, which is unlikely, but it could happen. We got an extra $20 million, so that might actually be an extra roster spot for that year. Or you can break it down and say, oh, I'm going to give two people $10 million apiece and have that space for that roster spot for that person. Or you can simply give it to somebody who may be on the cusp of getting that Supermax deal or max, but that's a whole nother conversation we'll talk about when it gets to contracts down the road. But it's something I definitely want to talk about with you right now, though, is who are the players that are sitting at the table with all of that, right? Who's making the decisions? Who's behind the scenes orchestrating the strings, right? And those are always the ones that are important to me when it comes to negotiating contracts in the NBA or any organization, whether it's the NFL, NBA, MLB, WNBA. You kind of want to understand who's sitting at the table, right? So my understanding of the process is, of course, you have the athlete. That athlete is going to be the most important person that truly is in the room because it's their life. So they need to figure out what it is that they want to do and have to have the best knowledge for themselves. Now you have some pieces that are involved in that conversation as well. Really, you're going to have your agent. They're the ones that are going to be negotiating on your behalf based off of what's best in the market, what's the amount of money that you can go out and receive per team based on where you are in your playing. You may have averaged 10 points last season, and now you're averaging 16 points. So you've bumped up into, your rebound, your stats. Those things also come into play. You may have been defensive player of the year or an MVP. Those things, those incentives allow for you to make more money and put you in different tiers in the tax bracket or in the salary bracket, shall I say, right? Not tax bracket. In addition to it, though, you're going to have not only your player, you're going to have the player's representation, which is usually an agent or an attorney, but also who's sitting at the table that people don't realize is also the NBA. They're a part of that contract agreement opportunities where you have the NBA that's kind of being your oversight. You're going to have the team that they're negotiating each contract. And so once the agreement happens with the team, they obviously have to get it approved by the NBA. Now, most of the time, each one of those contracts usually go through because everyone's pretty dialed up. But there's always that one, and it's still been bothering me and figuring out why this never happened. And which one you have to talk about is, why didn't Chris Paul, why wasn't he able to sign with the LA Lakers with Kobe Bryant back in the 2000s? I still got questions around that. But that's a whole nother one. Hopefully we can get Chris Paul on here. But having Chris Paul and him not being able to sign with the Lakers, and it got turned down once it got up to the NBA commissioner, I got questions. Nobody's ever answered that. Hopefully somebody will. But also you're going to have NBA Players Association that's also going to be at the table just to make sure everything is smooth on them. They're basically the players' union. So to make sure any of the contracts is always in that conversation, that everything is basically running smooth for them. And so they're their players' union rep. They make sure that they understand what's happening on the inside and outside, any discrepancies, any fines. They're the ones that kind of take that information and they help be basically an asset for the player on the other side of the table. So that's always great to have when you have someone who's internally understands all the plays, but also having your best interest at heart. That's what the NBPA is for, to make sure each athlete has the best opportunity with their contract. All right, just like with any org, any contract, anything in this world, there are some rules. And of course, you're gonna have rules within this space dealing with millions and billions of dollars, right? So here are a couple of rules that we have to make sure that we're understanding, right? So one is, let's look at this rule of the salary cap. The salary cap is a set amount by the NBA. Each team is to try their best to stay under that salary cap. So therefore, what truly happens is that one, you're playing fairly across the board, fairly, but then two, you aren't being taxed, and we'll get into that tax in a second. Certain leagues, so the NBA, there is a salary cap. There are other leagues, I believe baseball, there's no salary cap, so that's why we see teams like the New York Yankees or the LA Dodgers where they're giving out crazy amounts in their contracts and they keep adding more and more. So it's basically, for lack of better words, big bank takes a little bank, right? And so that's where certain leagues like the NBA, they try to mitigate that and not allow for athletes and teams to solely have control over just by buying out all the best players. And that's something that's been pretty proactive for the NBA, and it's allowed for you to just kind of have a little bit more parity in each of the rosters that you see across the board. But there are some times where you might see a big three or a big four all team up, and it's like, how did that all happen? But we right now there's pretty much a baseline for the salary cap that people aren't necessarily willing to go over. Now, again, there are rules. So I'm sure there was a time in which they negotiated this and said, hey, we want to go over the rules. So what does that mean for us? So here's one that a lot of people probably don't even know about. People remember the name Larry Bird. This was a rule basically started because you have a superstar in Larry Bird, but I don't want to have to give up my athlete, my superstar, because of the cap space. So basically what that is if your superstar on your team is trying to sign back with you and they want to do that, then they will basically pull the Bird rule. And what the Bird rule does is it allows for your superstar to still sign with your team and hopefully not taking you so far over the salary cap, which is going to allow for your team to be still the same as what you had before, but allowing for your athlete to still stay with them. So there's an exception with that. Now, there's also what's called a mid-level exception. Now, a mid-level exception is basically, I got a free card, right? You got your trump card, your wild card that you want to use. You're essentially saying, listen, we want to go over the salary cap, and they talk to the NBA, and the NBA says, hey, we'll give you, I don't know, $10 million to go over the salary cap. But here's the thing, you can't sign a superstar. So they're going to look at someone who is at that mid-level athlete, someone who is a bit more of a rotational player, maybe your 6th, 7th, or 8th man off the bench, and that's somebody who you can go out and go find and bring onto your team to make sure that you can still sign and have a solid roster, right? So you can have that mid-level exception that the team makes that request. It is essentially a loan for $10 million to go out and go get your athlete, even though you've already reached the salary cap, right? So they're kind of playing loan officer, if you will, that gives you an option to go out here and go get that if you're looking to exceed the salary cap. Now, another option and another rule that allows for teams to work within the confines of a salary cap is what's called a sign and trade. So here's where things can get a little bit interesting, but it'll make sense right here. I'm going to break it down for you. So a sign and trade is essentially, hey, I have this player on this team on team A, right? And he's interested in going here to team B. But team B doesn't have no money. They broke. They spent all their money. So what can happen is team A signs that athlete, that player, to their roster because they still may have some space. But here's where they kind of finesse the system. They're able to take that player and say, all right, team B, you don't have no money, but you do have some assets for me. So what I want a couple of those players, and I want a couple of those picks you got over there. I see you got a first-round pick here, you got a first-round pick there, and in future years. Oh, yeah, and I also see he might not be the best player, but he might be somebody that's serviceable for our team and where we're going with our direction. So we'll trade you this player for those picks and that player. Interested? That's essentially what a sign and trade is, because Team B doesn't have any money or don't have the cash on hand. But they're like, but hey, we don't have cash, but what we can do is we can make a deal with you if you sign him for this amount, and we'll trade you with these assets we have over here to make it all work out for both of our parties. And oftentimes you'll see a sign and trade. Basically, teams are creating their opportunities with the assets and resources that they have. They got to be a bit more resourceful. They got to be that person and that team that says, hey, we want who we want, and we're going to go get it by any means, so let's figure out a way to make it make sense for each one. So when you're in these rooms and you're seeing it firsthand, you're seeing names on the board, you're seeing where their stock is. It's basically looking at the stock market in this free agency. Whose stock has risen? Whose has dropped during the year? Who's worth this amount of money? Who's worth less money that we can kind of get for a steal and get him better and make him a better athlete for a role that we have over here? So there's a lot of things that happen to take place during this time that allows for a team to just grow and build during free agency. So although this time frame that we're in, from July to basically April, free agency is wide open. I believe free agency ends April 12th. This is an opportunity for each team to get better and to figure out what they want to look like throughout the season. And of course, once free agency is set and your team roster's there, you can always head over into the trading pool later on in the season and make some additional trades. And that's essentially what free agency is. Again, it's really just an open market for players to go out and see what teams they want to play for and if they still want to stay on the same team. Now, once you hear LeBron wants to leave L.A. or Jaylen Brown wants to leave the Boston Celtics, this is the time in which free agency starts to get going. And we really start to hear the best of the best and your superstars choosing what teams they want to play for. You're going to shake things up a bit. But it's not only the players. It's also the team in the background that's figuring out how they want to set their rosters and build around the teams that they already have that are existing. Not everybody needs a superstar. They may already have theirs, such as Ant Edwards in Minnesota, just signing Io, right? These are the opportunities that we've seen during free agency where the conversations have already started to happen, and now it opens up the door from now until April 12th during the season where all trades are final and nothing else can truly happen for free agency standpoint, and that allows for athletes and rosters to be set heading into the playoffs. So truly, free agency is really a time in which we get to see the breadth of athletes moving and having the options to choose what team, whether they're a restricted free agent, where the team they can match whatever another team is offering, or they're an unrestricted free agent, where they can choose to go wherever they want to go to. They can choose to stay with the team that they're on, or they can explore free agency and see what else is out there for them to play on a different roster. And so truly, that's what free agency is. I hope this helped you. I hope this broke down for you. And we out. More on Film Room, second half. Peace.